So something I've been wanting to discuss is in the context of today's COVID-19 situation, in the context of everybody in America receiving these huge checks, over $1,000 in the mail, including myself, over the next few weeks. The question I've been asking myself is, from an ethical perspective, is there a problem with that, right? Like obviously on a human level, you don't want to suffer. Having more money is always good. But that's not the question. The real issue for me is that there's an ethical dilemma with receiving this money. Number one, just on an obvious surface level, it's not money that I've earned. It's something that somebody else has given me out of the largesse, out of the pockets and the wallets that they have, which automatically puts me in a not happy place of living at somebody else's mercy and having some other person distribute their wealth to benefit me. Even if it's in my favor, it's still not something that I've earned, right? Like I've got claim to my money and my livelihood. This is, even though it's free money, it's not something that I've earned. So right away there's a question and the cloud around that. But the other question that I really want to think about and sort of address to you and see what you think about it is, it produces and enforces and encourages bad behavior in all of us. Here's what I have in mind. If we go back to the Great Depression in the 1930s, if we think of the massive soup lines around the block, the poverty, the hunger, the misery, right? What did that produce in the end from that generation, right? As we all know, with people that have had that experience, people that lived through that became incredibly frugal, careful with money, almost to a comic level. Like they were so good with their money and so careful and responsible that even through the 90s, the stories are being told that they would store their money as old people, as grandparents by that point. They would store their money in the mattresses, under the bed and in suitcases. They would not trust it into the bank's hands. It produced a very responsible and careful, a morally reliable person that went through hell and high water and struggle in order to get something really good out of life, which is not be dependent on other people's resources, right? That's the lesson they learned in the 30s. Because if they became dependent, they would die, right? And many of them were dependent, right? If you think of the 1920s, which was an era of frivolity and partying and letting loose and all that, many people did not learn the lesson of frugality and carefulness and ownership and responsibility in that 1920s era. So when the 1930s crash came, a lot of them suffered. So when our grandparents, those of us who were born here and had grandparents that went through that, saw their friends suffer from this irresponsibility and this frivolity, they learned the lesson of carefulness and saving. A penny saved is a penny earned. Measure twice, cut once. The early bird gets the worm. All these fundamental truths about human life and the way human life should be lived, they kind of maybe lost in the 20s and the 10s, and they relearned again in the 30s, and it carried them through their life, and they forced this wisdom on their children, even their grandchildren. So even through the 90s, you had this massive wisdom be pushed down the generations, right? Today, what are the headlines? Here's the headlines. People are living day to day as a matter of habit. No one's even used to saving. It's just known. And even worse, businesses live like this. Like no one is saving money in the business world. Why? Especially if you're a big business, corruption, right? With government collusion, right? If you lose money and you've got friends in high places, they will rescue you. They will send you a bailout. They'll consider you essential to the government's, whatever, to the country's welfare, whatever the excuse is, they will send you billions of dollars. As happened in 2008 when all these big businesses were rescued. by unknown criteria. So the corruption that brought on the 2008 crash did not end in 2008. People were not punished for their mistakes, for their irresponsibility, right? And so nothing was learned. So what reason as a business do you have now to be careful? Especially if you're a big business with corruption at your fingertips, why should you be careful? Like, give me a reason why a business should be careful right now. And I don't see a reason. All I see is don't be careful, be frivolous, be crazy, spend everything you've got, but also make sure you've got friends in Washington to rescue you in case of bad times, which is a horrible wisdom, like an absolutely unethically incorrect thing in every possible way, right? But as bad as that is, obviously it also applies to people like you and I, individuals. I have a small business, so I can't in any way qualify for the corruption from Washington part of it, but I can still qualify as an American for the corruption on the human level, because what if I don't have anything saved? And then a horrible, pandemic hits the world and suddenly we're all stuck at home. There's a crash in the economy. I'm not ready for the crash. I don't have the money saved in my mattress, in my suitcase, under my bed. I don't have the habits. None of us have these habits. Look at these statistics, right? People are living day to day. It's a well-known fact, and they're not punished for it. I'm not being punished for my lack of carefulness, for my lack of frugality and responsibility. And I think that's the real issue I'm worried about. This is the major problem I have with the current pandemic era. Is it's teaching us that it's okay. The life we had before the pandemic, it's kind of okay. Kind of did a good thing, and we're living the right way. And when we weren't, myself included, all of us were incredibly irresponsible. And instead of life teaching us not to stick your finger into the fire because you're going to get burned, the government saved us from our own mistakes. And so we'll never learn that lesson, because it's politically expensive to have people reap what they sow, to have people be punished for their own mistakes. It's expensive politically. It's cheaper politically to say, oh, we'll send you $1,000 and make you forget this ever happened, and you'll never have to worry about money. Now people are discovering they're getting more money on unemployment than they were getting as a salary. So even that's an issue, because once this thing is over, why should you go back to work at all? Why not just stay? That's gonna have you lose all your dignity, all your self-respect, all your energy as a human being is going to be sucked away and drowned in this illusion of existence that exists without purpose and without struggle. Struggle is so essential to happiness, because happiness is overcoming struggle. So if you have no struggle, if you live in a room with padded walls, watching Netflix 14 hours a day and sleeping and eating, that's not a life of a human being. That's a life of an animal.